You're live.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, March 12th, and we are here in Senate Transportation, and we are 3 days away from crossover, which is one of the big hurdles of the legislative session. And we're here with Mike O'Grady from Ledge Council. And Michael, if you could help us, we have the forestry operations bill S46, and we have a little piece on fluoride that we'd like to talk about this morning.
Sure. So you should have in front of you draft number 2.1 with a March 11th date and a 522 times.
Yep.
After your discussions last week and suggestions from several people, there have been some changes, and then there is effectively one decision to make, I would say. You may recall that Dana Doran had talked to the Department of Taxes, Will Baker, and they had requested on page 1, line 8 and 9, that instead of it saying the following motor vehicles used for forestry operations, it just should say the following motor vehicles used for timber cutting, timber removal, etc. So forestry operations was removed. Moving down on that page 1, line 15, you had discussions about how to set a threshold for motor vehicles so that the exemption would not be misused for personal, recreational, etc. use. You had initially gone with a 7,100 pound threshold because that is a current registration threshold, and an F-350 generally would exceed that. But when talking with the Matt Kostick from DMV, he recommended not using a registration weight because a person with an F-150 or any size truck can register at a higher weight rating and then potentially assert the exemption. And he recommended just picking a number that's high enough and then a metric. And talking with Logan, we think that just the curb weight, and Matt basically said 10,000 pounds curb weight would probably be sufficient for what your intent is. But I didn't want to make that change without discussing.
How does the committee feel about going to 10,000 pounds? You know, what they had said to me was there would be a number of people that would be tempted to at 71 or 7,200 to take their fleet of trucks and register them, even if they were a little below that. But this would make it clear.
So thank you. So would we say instead of loaded weight, would we say curb weight?
Yeah. Yeah, 10,000 pounds curb weight.
Okay.
The manufactured curb weight, so that you don't have people arguing what the manufacturer's listed curb weight of 10,000 pounds or more. So that work for everyone?
Okay.
That's his name is GBW.
Yeah.
Then that will be 10,000 pounds.
Is that like gross body weight? Oh, VW.
You think the gross vehicle weight would be included the load? That's 10 feet. Gross vehicle weight. I thought that's how we measure most other things. They have to estimate what the kind of average load would be.
Or the tear weight. Not the tear weight.
Maybe, I think Logan has said, use the listed gross vehicle weight of 10,000 pounds. Yeah. Okay. All right.
That's what the main effect
Is that the,
Huge.
that's the last decision to make in this?
That is the last decision, yes.
And there, and so the number would change on line 9 on page 3.
That's correct. Well, right. It's changing both.
The other question in this draft is we would make this effective July 1st.
That's correct. Again, I reached out to DMV at your direction and they said July 1st, 2025 would be.
Because section 4 in this draft is on passage.
Not in the draft that I gave you.
Well, 1.2,
No, 2.1.
oh, 2.1, excuse me. That's a long.
Yeah, it's, July
Perfect.
2025.
Yep. Can you, get us a clean draft of this?
Sure.
sometime,
Sure.
as soon as possible, and we'll take a vote on this after we have a clean draft.
Oh, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
Just because I had expected the other amendment that had the,
Oh, I sent it to you. I didn't know if you wanted to distribute it, but,
process. I'm sorry. I thought I sent a copy, but, so I need to bring that. Well,
Can you
maybe
explain?
it's too late. That amendment, would have the exemption be for 2 years and then sunset. And it also has a reporting mechanism where the agency would report back to us about the cost
right,
of
the revenue loss.
the revenue loss.
I was gonna say, when we come back with the draft, we're gonna need cost estimates for this from Logan anyways. If we can do that quickly, our problem now is that Friday's breathing down our neck.
It's written up. But.
It's drafted. I could
You
probably,
get the-
Well, the part of the problem with that is, I really would like to ask the department, because if they're gonna change all their everythings to accommodate this, what functionally do they have to go through, and what issue, does it cause any issues by just doing it for 2 years? And that, I would think we would be back here to re-up and do that, but I would feel more comfortable if we ran it by DMV before we charged off into it.
And that makes a lot of sense, and I would prefer that too. And if the rest of the group doesn't have the appetite for having a sunset, then I'll just drop it, because I certainly don't want to do it on the floor.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to talk about that, or you want to just,
Yeah,
I don't have much of an appetite for that, because I don't think it's going to be, I think it's going to be a very minimal impact.
well, that's one of the things. Oh, what was Logan's final estimate on the cost of this? With the 10,000.
right, it wasn't very much. Actually, he doesn't have the email I have from him, I don't have an estimate.
Okay,
The initial one I thought was about 300,000.
I think when he comes back with the draft, Megan, can you get a note over to Logan? What we need is with the 10,000, what's his estimate of cost? And if in conjunction with that, we'll take a look at and it would be my recommendation at that point that we take a vote. And,
Sounds good.
and if we can do that, later this morning, if Michael, you have,
Yeah, I can go do that as soon as you tell me to.
okay. Next piece is, if we wanted to talk about the fluoride bill. And I'll tell you, for those of you that aren't chairs that were at the chairs meeting last night, because the Natural Resources Committee, it was going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth about salt sheds and for communities. I asked Michael to draft a bill that said to, that would say in the draft that salt sheds would be a priority of the grant system that A&R has. So he's going to present something that would say that they're a priority and that we would get some report back. I checked in with the chair of the committee across the hall. She's fine with that because it is, we don't have possession of the bill. If the committee as a whole is interested in doing something around that, then members of this, I would ask members of this committee to sign on to an amendment to that bill. And the chair across the hall has said that she would be, and that she would take it up in her committee to and ask them if they could take a look at it in a positive way. But why don't you put that out, Michael, and
So I actually didn't know that you wanted me to bring that language today, and I don't have it. But basically what it would do is it would direct that in making recommendations from the Clean Water Fund each year, the Clean Water Board would prioritize assistance to municipalities for compliance with the requirement to cover municipal salt sheds.
sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Clean Water Board makes its own separate recommendations and they have like a multi-stage process to do that. So is this us making them have a recommendation?
So the Clean Water Fund, you tell them 3 different tiers of priorities where they make recommendations. And you can say in whatever tier you want to put this in, most likely this would be tier 2 for municipal. You can say how much you want awarded as a recommendation each year. For example, there's a requirement to fund water quality enhancement grants, and the recommendation shall not exceed 5 million per year. Whereas in another grant for basin planning, it shall be at least 500,000 per year.
Oh, I
So you can direct the board in how they prioritize their recommendations and at what amount they recommend.
So we heard in government operations that the Clean Water Board had made a recommendation to hold back some amount of millions of dollars in the Agency of Administration's budget to like keep, because they believed that there was a federal grant that hypothetically could be coming. So what is the source of the revenue for this? Because we could, I mean, the Agency of Administration has, I think it was like $8 million or something that they're holding back to potentially get a federal hypothetical grant for. So where does the money for this come from, and could we use that instead? Because when I asked them about how they made the decision to do that, they said it was a recommendation of the Clean Water Board, and that was kind of
Right, so you have 2 members of appropriations here. And
three.
And they will ultimately make the decision. The Clean Water Board's recommendation is just a recommendation. Conditioning something on the availability of a federal grant right now in this current atmosphere is tenuous at best, I would say. So I think that's probably something that the Appropriations Committee will look at. The money comes from multiple different sources. Property transfer tax surcharge for clean water,
Yeah, the
deposits, the sheets, the rooms meals tax. And it generally is around $47 to $52 million a year.
I would just put out there that if I was on the appropriations committee and I was looking to fund this grant program, I would look at the money in the agency of administration that's being saved for a hypothetical federal grant to do clean water. That's where I would look. And I would be supportive of this move if it wasn't coming out of other programs that were already directed other than that. That's
Well,
my point.
This is already eligible.
Right, it's already eligible municipal restoration grants. What you would be doing, it would be future. It's not FY 26. You would be making the change effective July 1, 25. And then future recommendations from the board would have to account for this.
And they would have to, we wanted
And
them
then
to
pass through
report.
each of- right.
Okay.
So it is not not impacting this year's budget.
Oh, okay.
And, as I said, Senator Watson is aware that we are looking at this, and she said that they would, it was her feeling that the committee would be supportive.
Their committee.
Yep.
Okay.
So I can boogie back to my office right now and do the change to 46
Okay,
and bring the language for the prioritization.
Yep.
It will take me less than 20 minutes.
perfect. So
Thanks.
we would, you're on till 9 o'clock, so if you got here in 20 minutes, we would, complete both of those and we would complete the work on both of these issues.
So for the prioritization language with your discussion with Senator Watson, was she going to add it in the Senate?
No. I said that I would bring it out of this committee. We, because we don't have the bill. The only way that we could amend it is we would put,
Right.
a majority, as long as a majority agrees in there. A majority or all of the members of this committee would be on amendment, and her committee would take it up and say whether they liked it or not. And she said that she thought that the committee would say yes to it.
So for purposes of what I bring back today, do you want it drafted as an amendment with each committee member listed?
Yes, please. And then, when we look at it, it may not be all, but it might be. And, yeah,
Easy with cross off.
yeah.
Do you want to?
So why don't we take a few minute break and, but stick around, because if we can move somebody up in our list of, because Damien we're gonna need him again.
Yeah, he's coming at 9 o'clock.
So
I'll call it the last street.
see if he